Good evening, everyone. The time is 5:01 p.m. and the Belton Independent School District Board of Trustees are now convened in a special board meeting on Wednesday, September 24th, 2025. A quorum of board members is present. This meeting has been duly called and notice of the meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. Public comments?
None.
None. All right. There being no public comments, the board is going to take a brief recess at 5:02.
Independent in the state of Texas, and just really thankful. She was with us about a year ago, and so excited Jody is back here this evening, and she's going to facilitate tonight's conversation. And so, Jody, have you met everyone on the board yet?
I believe I have.
Okay, awesome. Well, welcome.
Thank you.
I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you so much. You all just eat away, and I'll do some talking, and then I'm gonna let you all do some talking too. I want to get to know you all a little bit more. But I do appreciate this opportunity. I believe we have 2 new board members since last year. I don't think you were here last year. What you'll see in your packet, and we do some things that are the same. So for those of you that were here last year, some of this might look the same. We do a team trust inventory, and we do a good governance inventory. And we've attached both last year's and this year's, which I think is an interesting comparison. And I think will be surprising for you all too, just to see really that usually when you see new board members come online, you'll see a lot of changes to the trust in the good governance inventory. That doesn't necessarily bear out in the results here. So I was pleasantly surprised to just see that continuity continuing, but we'll talk about that in just a moment. As Dr. Golden mentioned, I am a lifelong educator. I spent 31 years in public education, retired in 22, and I've been with Moat Casey since then. And if you're not familiar with Moat Casey, we've been around for about 30 years, or either a little bit more or just right at 30 years. And we've primarily been known to be the school finance experts in the state. Lynn Moak, when we talk about PEAMS, you hear PEAMS and PEAMS data, he was the brainchild. He created the PEAMS system. Lynn Moak. Dan Casey, if you all have been involved with like 313 agreements on economic development sort of things, Moat Casey has been the guru for that. Of course, school finance, if you know Leo Lopez, if you know the name, he was the CFO in Austin ISD many years ago, but then was the deputy commissioner at TEA for school finance, and now he works with us. So and then of course Josh Haney, who worked with the comptroller's office. We have an amazing team on the school finance side. But in 22, we went under, we have Lynn Moak and Dan Casey sold the company, and we have new owners. And I think that's important to know, because what's happened in those 3 years is that our services have expanded quite a bit. Bud Gilcrease, a longtime superintendent, retired, and is one of the new owners, along with former chairman of the House Pub Ed Committee, Dan Huberty. So those names might be familiar to you. And so when you look at the services now that we provide, one service area is leadership and academic services, and we do team building. We do team of 8 training. We're trained to do that, but we do several other things within leadership and academic services. And I won't go into all of that. It's not what tonight is about, but I just want to give you a sort of a framework of who we are. We have a new line, advocacy services, which is not surprising knowing Dan Huberty's background and influence that he has at the Capitol. And so we continue to provide support, advocacy services and support, and that's actually one of the questions that you're asked in your good governance inventory, so we'll kind of refer back to that. And then innovative solutions is the 4th service area that we have taken on. Just helping school districts connect with innovative solutions. We like to say, if nothing changes, nothing changes. And we're at a place in education where we have to think differently about how we do business. And so we're looking for ways to provide school districts solutions to be more efficient in how we do business, or looking for alternative revenue sources, or looking at just maybe how we do things differently. And so that's kind of that's a real high-level view of what we do, but I'm happy to share any more later if you would like to know. But what we're here for is for team building. I'm trying to kill some time so you all can eat a little bit before I go to the next slide here. I am going to ask each of you a few questions. I'm curious to know why you ran for the board, and what impact will you be most proud of having made during your time on the board? Some of you have been on the board for many years. Some of you are brand new. But I'm interested to know, do you have a burning question that you want answered this evening? You may not have any questions, but do you have a question that you want answered? On full disclosure, I may not have the answers for you tonight, but I might have at least a perspective. If I don't have an answer, then maybe it's something that I can research for you and find out and get back to you. But I think it's always interesting for us to be able to just have some open dialogue. And while we're talking about that, team of 8 training, when we think of team building, team training, what is it? It's generally, the whole purpose of it is it's about relationship building among the 8 of you. And so that requires conversation and dialogue and honesty and really building trust with one another. And that's the whole basis of this. Are we clear on what our roles and responsibilities are? And do we have a unified purpose? Do we understand what our mission, vision, goals are? When I say unified purpose, I want to be really clear that having a unified purpose doesn't mean that we all agree on everything, right? But it's how we respond to one another once a decision has been made. When we walk out of here, whether you take a vote and it's a 7-0 or a 6-1 or a 5-2 or a 3-4, whatever the will of the board is, the majority of the board, we say, being unified means we walk out of here with our arms locked and we support the decision of the board. That's being unified versus being uniform, just expecting everybody to think the same, vote the same all the time. So I like to make that distinction to be really clear. But this is an opportunity for us to have some intentional dialogue about things that may be on your mind. So I'll just ask you to take a few minutes to think about those questions and answers, and then we'll just go around and hear from each of you. And whoever wants to go first, when you're ready.
Well, I can go first. I ran for the board because I care about our district and our community. I've been impressed with the schools that my boys have gone to, all the way up to BHS currently, and I'm a big fan and a supporter as much as I can. And yeah, I think that there are, I'll be real honest, there's public school districts I wouldn't want my kids to go to, but Belton is not one of those. Belton's at the top of the list, it's a destination district, and I believe in it. And so the other piece is I've run 3 organizations, and I've had boards of directors. I've had good boards, I've had amazing boards, and I've had boards that needed a little bit of improvement. And I know that when you're leading an organization and you have a good board behind you, it helps keep good people in place. And I have friends who work at municipalities, not in this community, but elsewhere, and they don't have good council members, and it runs off good staff, and the city suffers. And so that was another reason why I wanted to run, because I feel like we have good leadership in our district, and we want to make sure we maintain that, and we're strong in supporting our leadership and our principals, and making sure it trickles all the way down to the classroom. Impact, I think connecting parents to be a part of different opportunities in Bond Advisory Committee, a lot of different councils, being a part of SLAC and others. I think being out there listening to parents is probably the thing I've enjoyed the most as far as impact for the district.
That's great. Any burning questions you have? No. All right.
Next.
I'll go. why I joined. I want all the schools in the district to be successful. Some of them I feel like I bet will have been less successful than others. And that would be in like TEA campus ratings and things like that across the district. There seems to be, there's some that do much better than others, so I want to see some of those others that are struggling do as well. And then in 10 words or fewer, what I would be most proud of is if we get those campuses up there with the others. And then no burning questions.
Okay.
I'll go. Why I ran, I think a few different reasons come to mind. I think number one, what came to my mind first is just my passion for education. I remember playing school as a teacher when I was a little kid. And after graduating high school, that's what I wanted to be. And so, and that's the family business. Thank you, Josh. Parents or teachers, sister, sibling, aunts and uncles, just coaches, administrators. So I feel like it just runs in our family. So I don't know if there is a genetic component of being in your blood. I think it definitely did for me. So my passion for education and being a teacher also for about 11 years. I'll say going through walkthroughs yesterday made me really miss it. Really miss it. Just brought back lots of memories and so just my experience. And then I think for my family too, it's just we love our community and we just have a really strong desire to serve it in any way we can. And since I wasn't working at the time, the opportunity came up, and so it was just kind of a fun way to get back in and serve in just a different way. And so just a passion for education. And then I think the impact, I think would just be, I had a great experience as a kid. I had a great experience teaching. So I think just if we could create just that positive and meaningful experience for the kids' sake, for the teachers' sake, for parents, for just anyone who plays a part in education, just that it would be just a great experience all around. And I don't have any reactions.
Okay. You mentioned learning walks. You went on a learning walk. What was that experience like for you? How did you all?
Riley and I got to go to a couple of campuses yesterday. We met with the principal in the beginning and just kind of gave us some just background on what their focus is on, and then we got to go into just some classrooms and kind of sat back, got to watch, and then got to interact with students, ask them about what they're doing, and just observed how the teacher was interacting with kids and their lessons, and so.
That's awesome.
It was great.
Is that a practice you all do as a group? That's phenomenal. That's great. All right. Who's next?
All right. I guess we'll go next in line. Get ready.
Stand you up.
On deck, then you're on deck. You know what? I never dreamt I would run for the board, honestly. And so I had been involved with the district to try to increase the level of STEM education that was going on. And so I had worked with a couple superintendents ago, implementing the first Project Lead the Way curriculum in the school. So kind of helped her get through that and tour some other programs. We had put on, from a work perspective, in my paying job, we do a lot of community service, and we do a lot of it around trying to build our educational pipeline, or like a candidate pipeline, like long-term pipeline development. So we were doing a bunch of STEM camps, right, coding camps and things like that. So I had been involved with the school that way. And then, but I had never thought about, being on the school board. And then one night I got a phone call from a longtime board member who was not going to run again, and just had a long conversation about, hey, would you think about running? And my first reaction was no. Why would I do that? And then, he sold me on the one meeting a month that you have, and, all that kind of stuff, right? And so, he put the hardcore sales job on me.
About that stuff.
And, you know, I think at the time it was not something that I was necessarily, like I definitely wasn't looking for it, and I'm not sure that I was ready for it, but the opportunity was there, and so I had to ask myself, like, the opportunity is here right now, right? Like, if I'm ready, if I say no and I'm ready 2 years from now and there's not an opportunity, like, I will have missed that opportunity. And so I decided it was, you know, I'd go ahead and seize the opportunity and progress sort of what I had already been doing a little bit in the schools, and to see if I can make a bigger impact. I think if I had if I could pick a different career, I might be in the classroom. So, yeah, I mean, I've taught other things. I've never taught in like school systems, but I think there's a part of me that's sort of always been in that place. And so maybe this is a little bit of a way to kind of live vicariously through, you know, the organization to be a part of it. So, second question, I'm going to answer this like in my time to date. So I've been on the board, this is the middle, I don't know, first third of my, maybe 7 years, 8 years, something like that. And so to date, I would say my proudest accomplishment is the fact that we have more than doubled our CCMR achievement rates in the time that I've been on the board. So it was not great when I got here, and the fact that we've more than doubled it, and we are, you know, and some of the A through F ratings that we've just gotten for our high schools, it's absolutely amazing. And so I'm super proud of that, right? I mean, I feel like we've been doing some things that are really moving the needle to get our kids prepared for real life.
Yeah,
So
that's awesome.
yeah.
And 7 years ago, you mentioned one board meeting a month.
Yeah.
But that's, the requirements to be a board member now have changed.
I'm not sure it was that even back then. I think it was a little false advertising.
Yeah. The amount of training that's required of board members
Yeah,
and
yeah.
the amount of time and commitment, it has changed, which I think it speaks to you all's commitment to service to your community. So, all right, who's next?
Number 3, question 3.
You know what? I don't have a burning question immediately, but I reserve the right to have one later.
Yes, yeah, that's fair.
I like that. Why did I run for the board? I don't know if things have changed for me over the last several years, but my reason whenever the first started was it had to do with the way, you know, my family dynamics. I mean, my parents were illiterate. Grew up in an illiterate household, you know, no books, nobody read, that kind of thing. And the journey of 10,000 miles starts with a single step, right? And my journey in my life has been this district. Had it not been for the folks that took stock in me, who knows where I'd be? And it was here. So that's why I'm here. It kind of changed a little bit, but that was the primary reason. It's changed my family in terms of the generation. The generation has jumped, right? We've socioeconomically we've gotten better, right? Because of the start here. So I thought, man, it'd be nice for kids to have the same experience I had. To look back on it, and that's what I'd like to see. So that would be the answer to question number 2 is if I could talk to kids and say, you know what, I hear your story and I have the same story, right? Number 3, I think I'm going to steal Chris's answer.
Yeah, reserve the right.
Yeah.
You may have questions along the way. All right.
Well, let's see, why did I run for the board? Just like a lot of people, you know, you get a phone call, board member was stepping down, I've been here for a long time, and, you know, I was sold on the, you know, one meeting a month till 2, we all were. It's over 10 years ago, and that was a lie then, too. But really it was, you know, we moved to Belton because of the school system. I mean, Belton ISD, we say we live in Belton, technically, actually I lived in Temple, but we moved to Belton for the school system. My wife teaches in it. I have 2 boys who have graduated from it, and it was just like everybody else here. You know, you're part of your community, and either you're going to give back to that community, or you're not. I thought I had something to offer when I got on the board. Now I know I greatly overestimated my worth at that time, but that was it. It was just a giving back to the community, something that I'd been brought up to believe if you're gonna live somewhere, you're gonna be part of a community, you know, be part of the community. And I've always wanted to be a part of a community. Impact, you know, really I'd say probably two things. My personal favorite two things that I've been involved in was getting on the board and bringing to the forefront some of our lesser programs that people didn't know. I think in the time that I've been here, and a lot of it goes to Ms. Bass too, though, because of the Penguin Project, special ed, I think, has really risen in prominence in Belton ISD. People recognize it, they know all the work we do. I mean, we got this here,
Amazing.
and all the stuff that we do with that. And then other small programs, but truthfully, I think if I was really gonna look at it, I'm kind of the last of the old board, and was part of the transition from a small district that was very top down. You had a superintendent, you had a board president, they decided the goals, they decided what we were gonna do, and that was the way it was, and that is a small district, and I get that. But in my time here is when we transitioned to really a lot of community outreach. It's not a top-down district anymore. I mean, it's a collaborative now, and you know, that was a big transition, because when I got here, board members didn't really say anything. We didn't really have an input. And I'm not making a negative. That's a small, it had been run that way for 30 years, and that was the way it was. I was part of the transition group that we kept growing, and we're like, okay, we can't keep doing what we've been doing. And when that superintendent left and we brought in the new ones, and then I even grown more since Melinda took over, it was, hey, what would be your goal? How do y'all want to do this? And the board, and some of the board members here were involved in that, where why don't we reach out to the community and figure out what they want? Instead of us saying, well, this is what we're going to do, why don't you tell us, community, what you want, instead of us trying to constantly guess and then pat ourselves on the back when we reach a goal that you didn't even care about. Burning question, I got a ton of them, but none involve school. So.
I mean, I might be able to answer things. I don't know. All right.
I guess I didn't run. I got appointed as
Okay.
another board member stepped down. And but why I did it, I'm a product of Belton ISD. I've got 2 kids in and 2 kids that are coming up. Probably going back to 2019, I felt like the narrative around public schools went really negative at a state level. And I didn't like that. I care deeply about BISD. I had the opportunity to serve on a lot of committees, and folks would ask me questions or pose stuff to me, and I'm like, I don't know the answer to that. I'm not. I just go to the beef board meetings, you know. So it was an opportunity to get in and see, to help, because I think Belton ISD is an amazing district. It's done a lot for me personally and my family, and so that's why. Just I guess to get more involved in debate, I guess is the right word, not a fight, but just to be able to educate myself and then educate my friends and peers who are also going through the same stages of life. Mm-hmm. Number 2, the first thing that popped in my head was like good governance and a good financial plan, but I'm a local government nerd, so that's me. It's not nearly as exciting or emotionally driven, but that's why I'm here. I mean, that's why I think the board was kind enough to appoint me to fill a seat, is because I've had the opportunity to serve in other governmental organizations and been part of really successful things there. So not necessarily because of me, but I was there, so I got to see it. I got to help, and so that was great. And then do we just get up whenever we want the brownies, or is there a designated?
That's your one for you.
Get up whenever you want the brownies.
Yeah, this is a very informal,
I like that
comfortable
question.
setting,
Thank you.
and the brownies are right in there, so you're not going to hurt my feelings even if you want to go back for seconds. We'll keep the conversation going. All right, that's wonderful. I appreciate you all sharing. I think what I'm always just so happy about when I'm among board members and I hear them talk about why they ran for the board, why they're here. You all are driven by purpose and a common purpose. You know, I keep hearing kids, I keep hearing community and service, wanting to make things better, and I think that's very encouraging. For those of you that were here last year, it's the same quote, but maybe you don't remember it. I'm a William Edwards Deming fan take a look at this quote and think about this for just a minute. I want you to think about this from the context of your position as a board member, and then I want you to think of this quote in the context of the staff that are a part of the organization, the people that are doing the work within the organization. And by the way, I told you what team building is, what it isn't. For me, it's not, we're not doing ropes courses, these aren't like, these little activities back and forth that we're gonna, I really want there to be some discussion and dialogue and conversation, and this is how we really nurture the relationship among 8 people, is having honest conversations. It's not enough to do your best, you have to know what to do and then do your best. If you think about that as a board member, what does that say, what does that mean for you in your role as a board member?
You need to know your role,
To know your role?
know it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'll pull that string a little further, right? So my natural inclination when somebody has a problem is to jump in, to understand as much as I can about it, and to try to help resolve it. That's really dangerous as a board member, right? I mean, and so this is the case where like you have to know what to do, and then you can do your best, right? Like you have to know that like you actually can't do that, you shouldn't do that. You've got to know sort of how to direct that so that we can connect the folks at the district with the folks who are having the problem and try to kind of resolve that through and get them to the right place and connect them with the experts. Because really, I don't have control to make the decision, right, for whatever that remedy is that's being sought. Like I don't have the ability to give that, so let's connect them to the person that has the remedy. And so that I can then be here in the event that, it ends up in a grievance or something like that, right? And it actually needs to come, for me to be involved. Like if I've, I don't know. I mean, that's the first thing that comes to mind, right? It's just fighting that natural inclination. I think I've finally gotten over that hump, and hopefully. Let me know if I get in the way. Yeah.
Great.
That was a tough one at first, for sure.
Anyone
Stay
else?
out of operations.
Staying out of operations.
Yeah. Well, I think what y'all said is stay in your lane and understanding that, and it's the same in a company. I trust the people who work for me in my company, and I always have to teach new people to trust them and quit looking over their shoulder and quit getting involved. Let them do their job, and that's kind of the way I view the school board too, is either we trust the administration and the people to do what we've asked them to do, or we don't. But you can't be in there with your hands in it all the time, just like I can't with my own company. I mean, I have to teach, that's not just our role, but I see it all the time with people that want to solve the problem. Yeah, but you're not understanding you're taking responsibility away from someone who's probably doing it just right, just not the way you want it done at your time frame, and respecting that they're going to take care of their job, and if they're not, then we'll deal with that later. But trusting that these people know how to do their job, they're professional, let them do their jobs.
And it doesn't mean you don't, it doesn't mean you don't hold them accountable, or that like there's that trust but verify. How do you know that the administration is doing and the staff is doing what you all have charged them to do as part of the goal structure? So I trust, but also understand there's an accountability component to that. Yep. How about from the standpoint of, think about the staff. This quote in the context of the staff that are the boots on the ground that are here in the system.
I think it speaks to the competency that is required to do the job well. And I think we have that.
Yeah. If you take it all the way down to the classroom, I mean, I talk about this a lot. It's both an art and a science, the whole education thing. And so, you can't just come in and do your best, because you might actually, early on, you don't actually know what you're doing. And so doing your best is maybe not even good at all, right? And so you really need to know what you should be doing, like balance that art and the science before you can really, truly do your best. I don't know, I just...
And that's part of our role, right,
Yeah.
as policymakers, is to define what that is, right? We set the goals at a district level so that the staff, administration down to the classroom, teachers and all the sports staff know where we're trying to go. Because if you're vague about it, then people don't know, and then you can get mad because they didn't guess right as far as what you're supposed to be doing. And so I think it's really important to set,
The clarity
set
of
those,
purpose
yeah,
is really important.
yeah,
Yeah.
and to
100%.
set the policies and the way that you want them to be done, and then follow up and hold accountable.
Yeah.
Also support the team whenever they follow the policy the way that you wrote it. Right?
Yeah.
So it's being clear in our purpose.
Your job as a team of 8 is to set the direction for the district and to be very clear. You all said it, clarity and purpose, like what's our North Star, where are we going? And I don't doubt that the majority of people within a system want to do their very best. But if they don't know what to do, then they're going to be working hard on the wrong things, still trying to do their best. Deming also says 85% of the deficiencies within an organization, it's not the people, it's the lack of systems and processes. And so, and that goes back to clarity and that direction setting. It starts with you all, and then how does that flow all the way to the folks that are interfacing with the customers day in and day out? How do we know that the mission and vision and the goals that you have set are really understood and the work is being worked on, in relation to those goals? You all passed that. That was great. Good discussion. So when we talk about governance mindset, 2 things to think about. It's being aware and understanding the impact of the variables that affect your organization. And when you all were talking about why you ran for the board or the impact that you want to have, you all were touching on those variables. And we'll talk about those just on the next slide. But it's also, and you just said it just now, it's not enough to do your best, you have to know what to do. It's also knowing what your role is. And we like to say everyone has a role, but not everyone is in every role. So let's be very clear about what our role is, and are we clear about what we should be doing and not doing. Most of the time, we're not trying to step out of our role intentionally or maliciously. I think I heard Chris, you say like it's a work in progress, and you learn it over time. Just because you go through these trainings and you hear it over and over, like what's my job? What's my job? What's my role? What does board policy direct me to do as a board member? Here's some of the variables I heard multiple times. The desire to make sure that our focus is on kids and the instruction, and how are we making sure that we're continually improving every day? The oversight of your finances and your budget. That is becoming more and more of a challenge. And I think again, we have to think about how we do the work of education differently. With the constraints that we may or may not have with budgets. It affects, every district is affected differently by decisions that are made legislatively. Not everybody's impacted in the same way, so you have to sort of look at that. What's the big picture? You all are looking at the 50,000-foot view of that. Of course, long-term goals. We'll talk more in detail when we get to the roles, but long-term goals, you as a board should be thinking way further out than just the here and now. You're thinking 3 to 5 years from now. I think you all had a strategic plan. I think you're coming up soon, the end of a strategic plan, but then what's your long-term plan beyond that? And then of course culture. Erin, you talked about supporting, you being in the role of a teacher, supporting the staff. How do you create that organizational culture where kids enjoy coming to school, but staff? I love Southwest Airlines. I love Southwest Airlines. And they have these quips and quotes, but one of them was, if we're taking care of our people, we take care of our people first because they're taking care of our customers, which I absolutely love. How are you all supporting your staff in order to create a positive experience for your kids every single day? Your staff matter. The kids matter, but your staff matter too. And so you can't forget about them in this whole, these are the variables that affect the health of the organization. Thoughts or comments or any observations about any of these things? It's not, one is not more important than the other. These are all important.
I mean, I would like to see us look further out.
Mm-hmm.
Right, I mean, stop me if I'm, going off on a tangent, but like when I look at this, like where are there things that we could do better, differently, how do we shine brighter, right? Now that we're not doing it, but how do we do it even better, right? It's like, how do we look further out than where we're currently looking? So that's one of the things that jumps out at me when I look at that list.
Any other observations, comments?
Stephen Covey has a quote that he says basically when you pick up one end of the stick, you also pick up the other. And so sometimes it might be budget, but it trickles down to staff, to students, and so all of these impact one another. And it is important to think, that we think through, and I like Chris's comment as well, about the long term. Sometimes, we might make decisions that might hurt in the short term, but if we're also, and now, that's another thing to add to this, is just also time, but can actually help in the long term. So just remembering when we, one thing can impact something that we completely different in any of these.
All right, that's great. This is really the meat of where we're going to go. We're going to talk about team trust. We move at the speed of trust, and again, it starts with this group, the team of 8. What is the relationship among the 8 of you, and what does that trust look like, and what does that feel like? That sets the foundation for the whole district. My boss likes to say if one board member sneezes, the whole district gets a cold. It's like this idea of what happens here impacts the entire organization. So thinking collectively, look, it's a mind shift from when you got on this board, you might have come on with the idea of I want to help, I want to fix things. Like when people come to me, I want to help fix things, and you learn very quickly that that's not the role of an individual board member, that you all are a collective group that are making decisions together. And then in the end, ultimately at least 4 people have to say yes or no to something for it to be or not to be, right? But again, that mind shift of moving from me to we, making sure that regardless of how we choose to vote on certain matters or how we think about certain things, that there's always that trust because we're having honest conversations with one another, and respectful conversation in the moment. And by the way, we're televised. You all get to be watched all the time. And so how do you manage yourself in front of the camera? There are some boards we've worked with. They like to say things specifically because they're on camera. I think that's, to be honest, I think you have to be careful about that, because are you really thinking collectively, or are you thinking about individually? Are you really staying in the we zone, or are you branching out to me? We're going to talk about the 3 essential roles. We use the term strategic, tactical, and operational. And then, again, accountability. We have to be accountable. When you all are setting direction, there has to be an accountability loop. If you all are setting goals, how do you know if you're making progress towards those goals? So and I remember you all talking about it last year, there are some accountability checks. You all come and report back to the board on things that you're doing to give checks on, to make sure that we're focused on the right things. And then, of course, the governance framework, the other inventory you all took. So let's just jump into the team trust. Let's start there. And again, we move at the speed of trust, and we measure 4 areas on the team trust inventory. And you can start, grab your packet. And I've included the 2024 analysis along with the 2025 analysis. Each of you individually responded to this, but I want you to take a look at the group results. I think it's interesting to look collectively. And let's just make some observations about, like, share, I don't know, mine has a big line down the middle. Is yours okay?
I think we're good.
Okay, you're good. So take a look at specifically look at 2025. You can look at the difference between the two. It was interesting for me to see that there's not a whole lot of differences between last year's and this year's. Based on the inventory, there seems to be a high level of trust among the 8 people sitting in this room, or the team of 8. But there are a couple of areas. Normally when we see the neutral, that's usually new board members coming on. This is just, I'm making an observation. And usually, I don't know who, this was anonymous, 100% anonymous, so I don't know who said what. But normally if you don't know or if you're neutral, we generally find that to be new board members because they just don't know yet. They haven't been on long enough. But there are, there may be some disagreements, and we like to open it up for discussion. If anybody wants to talk, we're not going to put anybody on the spot, but certainly would love to hear some observations about this year's team trust analysis. Are there any surprises? And is this an accurate reflection of is this what you would have expected as a board in the results?
And if you had asked me, without looking at the results, compare the results this year to last year, I would not have expected the results to come out this way. Just completely honestly. Right, because we've got 2 new faces on the board, right? And so from like a group dynamic standpoint, I think we're stuck in between storming and norming at the moment. I think. And so I think we're still learning as a group, like who each other are, why we're here, what is it that we care about, what the role is, how do we go about it. Like, I think we're still very much figuring that out, and we have to figure that out to some extent all over again, because those of us who have been here for a longer time maybe take a little bit of this for granted, right? I mean, it's been a little while since I was new. And so, there may be opportunities for us to explain some things differently, right? Or to bring more of the detail to the table, knowing that we have 2 new faces, right? Whereas, because our 2 prior board members were, I don't know, 8 years, 10 years, something like that, right? And so there was like a different operating level of knowledge that we had as a group a year ago than we have right now. And I think it's been a little bit difficult for me to kind of wrap my head around that and remember that maybe we might need a different level of detail or conversation to make sure that everybody's on the same page. So yeah, I actually would have expected this to be a little worse. I don't know. Maybe worse is not a good word.
Right.
I would have expected it to come out differently. Yeah.
Yeah. Other observations?
I agree with Chris. I was kind of expecting, I agree too, that with the word worse isn't
It's not the right word.
It's not the right word,
Yeah.
just different, or
Yeah.
just the numbers shifted differently. I'm actually really encouraged to see this. And so I think we can always, I think we're a mature enough group that, yes, change is not always easy, it's not always fun, but I think we all have the same goal in mind, is that we're ensuring a positive experience for our kids and staff. And so we're gonna be mature adults, and we're gonna trust each other, and we're gonna do our best. And I think in just the couple of months that the two guys have been on, I think we've been able to create some trust with one another, and I think it's, I mean, just in a few short months, it does show. And so I do feel encouraged that we're still on the right track together. Because I know a couple of years ago, we really, like when we would go to TexEdCon or SLI, people would notice just the unity with Belton. And I think that we're still going to be there. We're okay, and I think we're on the right track to be still a unified board together, because again, we're mature adults that we have one goal, and that is to ensure a positive, successful experience for kids, for our staff, for our community, for our families. So I was encouraged to see it.
Yeah.
So thank you for providing both so that we could compare.
Well, that's only because I got to do it last year too, so I had the results. I thought it would be fun to look at it together. There were a couple of outlier, and I highlighted those, not outliers, but the believability questions, B1 and B2, we had some neutrals there, which it's not uncommon to see that. Maybe just because we're still learning each other and getting to know one another and how we do business. There were a couple of disagrees, and again, I'm not gonna ask anyone to, disclose unless they want to. If any comments around that, if they chose those items, or if they didn't, if you didn't choose it, do you have an observation about that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to say the same thing I think I said last year, right? Because there was also a disagree last year.
Yep.
For B4, right? I mean, I would say I don't remember actually how I scored this one, but if for some reason I'm a part of the one, the disagree, I would love to have that conversation, right? So, please make sure that, I want to know if I'm part of the problem. So, we don't need to do that right here, right, on camera. Let's not do that, okay? But if I've done anything, along those lines, and I think we owe it to each other to, address that if we feel like that's going on. For any of these that are, maybe less than agree, I think it's important that we raise those.
Yeah.
But you can find a way to do it not on camera.
You did say that last year, and I would.
Yeah. Yep. You can tell me anything you want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But just
Any other comments, observations? Like Erin, I was very pleasantly surprised because you generally do see some differences when you have new people coming in and getting to know one another, but it just seems like things haven't. It looks better than last year's results in some cases. So I found that to be interesting.
I'm excited about where we can go.
Yeah, 100%.
So,
Yeah. All right.
The prognosis is good.
Yeah. Yeah, the prognosis is good.
Well, and I think, Brennan said earlier, why he got on the board around, I think you said 2019, when just kind of the negative narrative around public school. I mean, in the last almost 5 years I've been on, we've been through some hard stuff together as a board. And not that I want hard things for us. We've had to navigate together through some pretty challenging and tricky and just difficult things. And I think because of some of those things, it's really brought us closer together. And whether or not we want to admit it or not, I think we're mature enough that if we have differences, we're not gonna air that out at a board meeting.
Yeah.
I think we're better than that.
Yeah.
yeah. But I do want to recognize, though, that the makeup of the skill sets of the board is different than the last board, right? And so, and honestly, I think Brandon and Riley, you guys bring skill sets that we didn't have on the prior board, right? If you just and so I'm excited about the skill sets and the background that you all bring to the table, right? I mean, you bring a counseling background that none of us have or had, maybe a little bit Rucker, but in a different way. And Brandon, sort of your organizational maturity from budget, finance, government operations, all that kind of stuff, right? Like, we kind of thought we knew what we were doing, right? But you bring a real expertise to that, right? And so part of the reason why I'm so optimistic about like where we go from here, right, is we've actually got maybe a broader skill set than we've had, at least in my time on the board. And so I think once we figure out how to leverage everybody's skills, right, to the optimum, I am excited.
Observation. That's great.
Yeah.
Yep.
I might have a burning question.
Okay.
Uh-oh, here we go.
Well, here we go.
When I first got on the board and then we went through the first Team of 8 training, that was a new concept to me. I didn't expect that kind of, I don't know, it was just different, right? You don't expect that in a governing body, because we're part of the government, right? We're a part of the state. So you don't see that, when you think about legislators and you think about city councils and all that. And I don't know if city councils do that. Brandon might be able to talk on that, but I don't know that they have the team concept, and they represent consistency. It's a political thing. So the mindset that I had to come in here with was thinking about, well, this is apolitical by statute, right? Mm-hmm. So can you talk about why just Team of 8, why this is so important, and why this is so much different than any other governing body that you can think of?
Well, I'm going to say because kids.
Right.
I mean, I think that's where it begins. I mean, there's nothing partisan about kids. We are all doing this work because we want what's best for kids. We want what's best for our community. We want what's best for their future. So that's my short answer is because kids. We're dealing with lives, and but the team building part of it, I think in any board structure, that team concept is important. I think we just do a better job of it in education about keeping it a focus. Like, this is important because how do we move? How do we as a collective body come to agreement on what the vision and mission is of our and our goals? Like, that's super important. I indirectly worked with a city council that did not have goals for their city manager. Like, literally, it's just a different mindset. So I think that's just who we are. What we do is what are the goals and how do we measure them? And that's part of the ISO training. I think that's part of what makes us different is that the stakes are so high. Well, the stakes are high in cities too, but the stakes are high because we're dealing with kids. I don't know.
Most of you guys know Ty Taggart, and then one of the things that Ty always said was, he said when he got elected, he thought, man, I'm going to go down and I'm going to straighten all of those people out down in the administration building. I'm going to get this thing back on track. And he said, boy, did I have a rude awakening once I started to learn more about what these processes are. And you go through that sometimes as when you come on a board, at least I did, and he's right. He's right about that. Okay, and this addresses that.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting that the state mandates this for school boards.
Yeah.
Team training.
Right. It's the law.
It's the law.
Yeah.
But they recognize the importance of 8 individuals. There's an accountability piece. It's board policy. It's not just local. It's legal. It's directing boards. This is what your job is as a board member. You don't get paid to do this. You're one of the only boards. What?
You get brownies.
A lot of folks that sit on boards get compensation. There are a lot of boards that get compensation. Councils get some form of compensation. You do not. I think that also makes you a different sort of body, It's a good question. All right, so we've kind of taken individual thoughts and looked at the collective scores. We've had an opportunity to talk about that. Really, as far as follow-up actions, I think, again, just continuing to do what you're doing, talking with one another. If there is something that somebody needs to say to somebody, what I'm hearing in this group is you can go directly to the person to have that conversation. There doesn't have to be, that sort of unknown, the unknown. If we don't talk it out, we act it out sort of idea, All right, so I mentioned this, everyone in the system has a role, but everyone is not in every role. If you will, in your packet, right after the team trust inventory, there is a chart that looks like this, and it says 3 essential roles in an aligned school system. I want you to take a look at this. This starts to define the different roles. Who's in the strategic role, who's in the tactical role, who's in the operational role. Take a minute to look through that, and then let's have some conversation around this. So what are some obvious differences between the strategic role and the tactical role?
We're not in the tactical role.
You're not in the tactical, but you notice that the superintendent is in both the strategic and the tactical. And you can see the superintendent straddles between those two. Why do you suppose that is?
Well, the superintendent's the CEO. They're just like in a normal corporation, you have your board, you have your CEO. That CEO is the link between the board and the employees of the company. Same thing with a district. The superintendent is the only person that works for the board. We don't employ teachers, we don't employ principals. They do not report to us, they report to her. So our expectations flow as a team of 8 through her to the rest of the district. And that also gives us one place of accountability to go. And the superintendent is ultimately held responsible for what goes on in the district by the board.
It's the way the communication flows. So at the strategic level, Dr. Golden is part of that conversation, but remember the very first quote, the Deming quote, it's not enough to do your best, you have to know what to do and then do your best. Part of that is, once we know what we're doing, now we have to communicate it through the system. And so superintendent will start to communicate with the tactical role, but notice how your administrator straddles between tactical and operational. How does that communication get all the way to the operational role? And I think what's also important to know, notice that the arrows, it doesn't just stop, it goes both directions. So if something's not working, there's got to be a way for the folks that are the boots on the ground that are interfacing with customers have a way to communicate up that I'm not clear, we're not getting this right, we need help. There's got to be a way to flow back up to the top to maybe have that discussion. What else do you see in here that are some obvious differences?
Strategic, long-term, tactical, short-term.
Strategic, you all are looking 3 to 5 years out. You're 50,000 feet in the air looking. Tactical is more than 10,000 foot. It's like what's happening between now and the end of the year. Like, what are we making sure that we're making progress on the goals that we have set for this year? You guys work on the system. Tactical, operational work in the system. That's a difference there. I like to think of you all, I probably said it last year, I'll say it again for the sake of the new folks in the room. I say it with every board. I see you all as, if you think of, I love Southwest Airlines. If you compare this to the airline industry, I see you all as air traffic control. You all are watching where the planes are going. You're not flying the airplane. If you leave air traffic control to fly the airplane, what happens?
Planes crash.
There's chaos. There's going to be chaos, and there's lack of direction. There's no direction. But if you're at the 50,000 foot view and you've got your superintendent leadership team, they're flying the airplanes, this is where we're headed, we know we gotta get from point A to point B, but somewhere along the way, you might discover that we've got some turbulence and that we've got to change course. You all help with changing course, like what do we need to do differently, think differently, how do we respond differently to make sure that we're headed in the right direction. That's the structure. Your operational folks, these are the ones, I keep saying, they're the ones interfacing. In the airline industry, it's your ticket, the folks that are at the ticket counter helping you buy your ticket. It's your flight attendants who are serving you and helping you. It's the mechanics and the luggage folks, and it's all of those people that are making it happen every single day. Those are your teachers, those are your groundsmen, your food service, your paraprofessionals, your custodial and operational folks. How are we supporting at each of those levels? But again, everyone has a role, but everyone is not in every role. And so how do you know when you've maybe stepped out of your role? We'll talk about that. Go to the next page over, and this is an activity I'm going to ask you to do. Same kind of concept, steering versus rowing. Are you steering the ship? That's the strategic. You're setting the direction, or are you rowing? Are you trying to do the work? Are you trying to carry out the work? Look at each one of those bulleted items and label them as an S for steering or an R for rowing, and then let's talk about each one of these and why it matters. So, to be clear, so if you look at, can you walk us through the daily schedules of the new instructional coach? Is that a strategic role or is that a tactical role? Are you steering or are you rowing? When you ask, can I see the lesson plans for next month's science curriculum? Are you steering or are you rowing? Or if you ask, what risks or barriers might prevent us from meeting our strategic goals? Are you steering or are you rowing? And do that for each one of those. So there's only one in each one of these sections that is actually strategic. So I'll ask you to identify which of the three bullets are strategic. So for operational oversight, which one do you think is the strategic question?
The risk and barriers.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
What risk or barriers might prevent us from meeting our strategic goals? Why do you suppose the other two fall under the tactical? And by the way, they're not bad questions to, like, inquiring minds want to know, but there are ways to ask questions to avoid getting in the weeds, if you know what I mean. Operational overreach. The two that for tactical, why it matters, these questions dive into tactical decisions that should be left to staff. Oh, I forgot to fix that. They signal distrust and shift focus from strategic oversight to tactical. There, I'm sorry, I missed a little piece there, so I don't remember what the ending is, why it matters. But it should be, because it does signal distrust of the staff if you're asking certain questions that like the superintendent should be responsible for. If you look at staff management, let me go back here. Which one is the strategic? Number one. How are we supporting? You all are involved in the what. You decide the what, the goals, and then your leadership team is responsible for determining how the work gets done. But if we look at why it matters, staff management, we're going to call it interference, wanting to interview the new athletic director. Some of these may sound funny to you guys, but these are real life situations.
In every small town that happens.
It happens. So like these
I know for a fact that it happens
these
in
things
every
have
small
happened. These are not things that we just make up. These are things that have happened. Why it matters. These questions can be undermining to the authority of the superintendent, who you've given responsibility for hiring decisions, and that ultimately could erode trust in their personnel decisions. Looking at budget oversight, which of the three would you say is strategic? How do we develop and manage the school district budget to ensure that resources are allocated efficiently and equitably? That's big, yeah, and that is strategic. And that's one of your most important responsibilities with budget, is ensuring efficiency and equitable distribution of funds. But why it matters. The board should approve budgets. The other two, looking at the other two, can we cut the field trip budget and reallocate it to classrooms? Can we approve each line item before it goes to the finance team? Now you all are getting really, these are things that have come up as real questions. But boards approve the budget at a strategic level, not itemize or override staff decisions. Here's the thing, if you all decide you want to fly the airplane, then you're accountable for what happens in the district. You can't hold Dr. Golden and her staff responsible if you want to be that decision maker of all things. And then academic oversight, which of these?
Number two. Mm-hmm. But this one's funny because we're actually involved in the other ones.
Right.
So we have to approve
Right.
Okay.
by law,
Uh-huh.
we have to approve the curriculum for
Yes.
reading. 'Cause
Yes.
this year we had two different ones, recommendations made to the board, but
Yeah.
ultimately we have to decide.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So although it's on there, yeah, we actually have to do that now.
But you weren't sitting on the committee that reviewed.
Yeah.
That's right, I
That's
wasn't.
it.
But we do
yeah.
have to vote on it.
Yeah.
But no, we don't want it, but that, I mean, two is the answer, and then the other one's just funny because we actually had to vote on bell schedules at least twice since I've been here. When we went to block scheduling,
Right.
and then went back from the COVID scheduling, we all had to get involved in areas that we never wanted to be involved in, but it was, okay, how are we gonna move kids to all these different
It's
places?
interesting. I know a lot of districts that are moving to 4-day weeks. I mean, those are big
That's
decisions
boards.
that would probably come to the board. But that's not gonna come to the board without the leadership
Right,
having done
recommendation.
the research, presenting the information to the board to make a thoughtful decision around that. The same with the reading program. And I did watch a board meeting, because I'm a glutton for punishment, watched a board meeting that they were approving a reading program, but the staff did a phenomenal job of the research of what they did and bringing forward what they were recommending and all of the steps that they went through. And in the end, there were a couple of campuses that wanted to do a different program, and so they were contacting board members saying they wanted to do a different reading program. And so then there was conversation about, well, we think that we should consider other reading programs. So the totally stepped out of, because, and again, when you're in a smaller place or you have connections with folks in the system that they feel very comfortable calling a board member directly, which is okay, they can do that. But then what is your job in relation to responding? Like, do you go to the board meeting to say, I think we should do this reading program instead of that reading program because I heard about it? Or do you ask, what was our process for, that's the question, what was our process for deciding what reading program we were going to bring forward? And what data supports the decision to do this one versus that one? Not, I think we should do this one, or let each campus pick their own. Those are real life problems. So why it matters, these questions confuse governance with management, and boards should set goals and monitor outcomes, not prescribe the methods. Because if you prescribe the methods, then you become responsible, then you're accountable. You can't put that on Dr. Golden. You got to let the team do the work. Any questions about that? It's kind of fun, isn't it? It's good practice. Like, what's my role? We also talk about how do we know if we've left the strategic role. So the next page, there are 20 signs the board or individual board member, like the collective board or individual board member, has left the strategic role. Take a look at these, and are there any that sort of, you can self-confess if you want, like, oops, I did that one early in my, you don't have to, you know. Or are there any that you think, that one's a surprise? Or this one's really not a surprise, this one's an obvious.
I could use some clarification on the first one, doing your own research. Well, I see that it says instead of relying on a tactical role, but I think everybody, all of us have a duty to do our own research on the things that we're being presented with. You know, they do, our staff does a great job of getting us, you know, a lot of information before our board meetings, but we are responsible to research and look through those. I know I've heard other board members say, hey, it was more difficult in the early year. It is harder for me because I'm reading through and I don't know what a lot of the, you know, the different purchases and things that we're doing. But they said, yeah, it gets easier, you know, because they've already done these in prior years. But I think we all have a duty to do our own research.
Yeah, I'll give you an example of, I was working in a district and it was pretty obvious. The board member made a comment that I don't trust what the administration is going to tell me, so I'm going in and I'm talking to the teachers to get the information that I need. Like, I'm going outside of the window to get information so that I know what's really happening versus, it goes back to trust. Do I trust the administration? Now, doing research may mean, like what you just said, I don't have the context, or I don't have the background, I need more information. And particularly doing a board meeting, and I would imagine you all have board operating procedures, I would bet what's included in there, I haven't looked at them, but before a board meeting, I would bet that part of your research is if I don't understand something, I'm going to ask before I get to that board meeting, so that my questions are answered before I get there, and I'm fully, like, I feel like I now understand what I'm about to go into or under. So when we say research, it's going outside of the, like, you absolutely should ask questions of your superintendent. How did we get to this decision? Help me understand, you know, the data behind this, versus literally board member having breakfast with a group of teachers to ask them questions about what they thought about certain things. That's way out of bounds. That's a different kind of research. Does that help?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Other observations, thank you for that. Other observations, questions?
I think number 18 is, was interesting for me personally, kind of coming up from, you know, starting to where I am now, right? So this is understanding that communication needs are different in the three roles, right?
Yeah.
And what you say in those three roles is like, what is the impact of what you say, and where you say it, right? It's not about can you ask the question or not. It's about how you ask the question and where you ask the question and who's the audience that can hear that question. And what is, call myself out for a second. So early on, I asked a question in a board meeting. It was a question that needed to be asked. It probably shouldn't have been asked in a board meeting. Jeff knows exactly what I'm talking about. We're not going to go into any more detail. But you know, it needed to be asked. I asked it. I stuck my foot in my mouth. I mean, it basically undercut the superintendent pretty hard. Am I sorry that I asked it? Probably. I'm sorry that I asked it in the venue that I asked it, right? Like I should have asked that question, like in a one-on-one, right? Behind, like, and yeah, and so like that was a tough lesson for me. And so like I've maybe grown to be hypersensitive about like, okay, yes, it's a board meeting, it's our board meeting. You're not supposed to talk to the camera or anybody else that's listening, but those other people that are listening hear what you're saying, right? And they assign meaning and assume things that maybe were not your intent, right? And so I've tried to be extremely careful about what does that communication actually look like in that meeting when everybody's there, because they don't understand, you know, maybe some of the other conversation that, you know, we've had in a one-on-one or something like that, right? So I don't know, that was really tough for me early on. You know, I stuck my foot in my mouth, I think just once. I think it was just that one time.
Can you verify that?
I think everybody does that on accident at some point, either to a big level or a small level. But it is learning over time, and then Chris made a good point. People were watching the meeting. Their context for watching that meeting is probably not the context that we have inside knowledge in that meeting, and we're having conversations back and forth. They don't have that knowledge. And so Chris and I could be having a discussion or a disagreement about something that we're discussing. Well, we have a context for that disagreement. Someone else watching it, depending on how we react to each other, be like, man, they just, no. It's how do you say, what do you say? And there's a time and there's a place. And I think every board member has to learn that, you know, I can remember sitting in meetings and being like, man, I really want to ask this question, and having to think, okay, do I ask this now or do I need to wait until later, you know, to ask the question? Because sometimes, now, hopefully, you know, you've read your board materials, you know it, but I think that Chris makes a great point. It is a learning thing to realize that people are watching the meeting, and although your question might be very fair, how did you ask it? I've seen board meetings where, not ours, I've never seen it happen in our board meeting, but I've watched other boards where when the presenters get up to talk about whatever it is they're presenting, the English curriculum or how we're doing on the STAR test, and I've watched board members ask targeted questions to make that person look bad. And you can tell when it happens, and it is you feel horrible for everybody involved except the SOB that asked the question. Because you can see the other board members and being like, why did you do this? But you can see it, and I think that's just, I always ask myself those questions as to, if I've really got a concern, then I need to step out way before the meeting. I mean, we've got the agenda, we've got everything, and if I've got something I'm really, you know, got a burr under my saddle about, let's go get that taken care of before the meeting. You know, I may still disagree, but we're not going to go into a meeting with a gotcha. And, oh, no, I'm going to put the superintendent on the spot and this principal on the spot because I'm really mad about something that happened. Okay, take care of that like a professional, like a mature adult, not in the meeting.
And that's what I ended up doing.
Yeah.
So I ended up, you know, first day the packet came out, I would get the packet, go through the packet day one, and then there was usually about a page and a half long, you know, list of questions. I was still new, right? Like, I didn't know a lot of this stuff, right? But I felt like I needed to know some information, right? And so I felt like there was a better way for me to sort of ask those questions and be prepared and like know that like that meeting wasn't the right place to do it. So, and I took that one hard.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can ask questions that have not just you get an answer in the meeting, but they can have a horrible impact throughout the district, all the way down to the staff, right? So sometimes I mean, most of the time, I'm very calculated as to what I'm asking. I want to make sure that I am not sending the wrong message. Because you can send a message with a question, and it may be the wrong message. You didn't intend to do that, but you can do that, so you have to be very careful. But I feed off everyone. I mean, I listen to what everyone says, and sometimes someone says something, I thought, man, I didn't even think of that. So I feed off of this group and the things that they say. Sometimes I'm thinking, you know what, I really don't like it, and then I hear someone say, it's like, you know what, maybe I do. And the other thing that I think about is if I'm gonna, I remember over the years, you know, when we had maybe a 5-2 or a 6-1 or I don't remember too many 4-3s. Do you remember?
Not in my time.
No, not many 4-3s, but you have to think about, and someone said this one time in a workshop or something, and about, don't just vote no just to vote, right? Because when you walk out of that room, when the board meeting is over, I mean, we're taught that you have to respect the decision of the board, right? So if I voted no, I remember one time when I voted against the majority, that was it for me. Okay, I didn't talk about it anymore. All right, that was my opinion, but I respected my colleague's decision, and I went through it. And it was it was during COVID. It had to do with when we cut off the date for averages. Remember that?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So it was myself and Dr. Montgomery. We were on the other end, and we had a pretty good discussion about all that.
Yeah.
I was trying to convince everyone else to go along with me, but I couldn't do it. Right? But I was okay with it. I was okay with it. I understood why they voted that way, and I had understood from a workshop like this that I had to respect the decision of my colleagues, and I've always done that.
Yeah,
Jump in.
So I think a question I would have for all of you is, one, and I hope I convey this to our team. I don't want our team to be afraid of questions. You know, we can't work in a fear-based organization, and if people are afraid, if any of us think that won't trickle down to a classroom, we're kidding ourselves. And so I'm not. Hopefully I'm enforcing that with our team. Good questions make systems better. And so, but I also tell them, and I feel very comfortable, if I don't know the answer to a question, I'm not going to make it up. And I need to feel comfortable telling y'all, I don't have that information. And I need my team to be comfortable with doing that as well and not to be afraid of that. So let me get to my question. My question is, I want to make sure you're getting enough information, though, so that you can get a thorough answer and prior to a board meeting so that you can make a good decision. Because there are so many, this is complex work that we do. Sometimes there's an easy answer, and you could be walking into a board meeting and I could go, here's the answer, and you got what you needed. Other times it takes time to get you what you need. And so my question is, are you getting information when you need it? And if you feel like you're not, and I'm talking about for a board meeting, if you're not, what are your suggestions for how we address that? Because our job really is, and we talk about this, is to get you as a board the information you need to do the job that only you can do. We are not the governance team, you are. And so I want to make sure that you're getting information so that you can make a good decision.
I have a comment on that. I don't know what the average page amount is on these packets, but 200 to 400, somewhere in there. I've been surprised. It's a lot to consume in a weekend, especially when you don't know what a lot of these things are. Same procedures I have, I'm writing down things and reaching out. I was super excited to hear that legislation made it to where we're going to have now 3 full days, and I thought, well, good, because that'll give us more time. I'm hoping, and I don't know, exactly how. The more time we have to review a packet, the better. But it's not an issue of the questions, because I've always had responses when I reached out. It's just, for me, it's just more the time. If we had more time to review the packet and then send out the questions, I think that would be helpful.
So here's, if I can make a recommendation, right? So one of the things that I did, you know, I kind of changed my behavior a little bit, where like when I process the packet, right, I take a look at the agenda first and just look at the headlines, right? Like, oh man, is there something in here that I really don't understand, or I really like think I'm gonna have a lot of questions about? And I start with those things first, right? So I don't go top to bottom. It's like, you know, it might be this one from the middle and this one from the bottom, and I'll go read those. And if I end up thinking that, hey, I'm gonna have a lot of questions, like I'll try to get those out like as soon as I possibly can. So that's just like one thing that I've adopted from just a packet processing standpoint.
That's helpful.
I did also start just a couple months ago loading the packet into Gemini, right? So the district Gemini AI tool. So you can load the packet in there, and then you can start to ask it questions, right, about the agenda packet. And now you got to take it with a grain of salt, right? You can't just
Yes.
right, but like you know. So, but yes, I mean, I've started to do that a couple months ago, and that's also helped me a little bit too, to sort of process through some of that. And now that I've got a couple, you know, I've got several months in there, like I can actually look for things sort of across, like you can ask a question and it'll look across multiple agendas that are up there. So those are just some things that, like, it's a short period of time, I agree, right? I mean, it's a lot of information to choke down, but.
Which is one of the reasons why, and
Yeah.
now I want to back the question up even to one-on-ones. Are one-on-ones being effective for you to get information that you need even prior to a board meeting? You don't get a packet. You know what's on the agenda.
Yeah. If I'm going to answer this question personally, I think I'm in a great place with the amount of information I'm getting and the timing of the information. Like I finally, like 8 years in, I'm in a routine. Like I gotta know what's going on, and you know, I'll plan my weekend around it, which is, I don't know, maybe not healthy personally, but right. So that and like the weekly updates, right? The board bulletins, right? Like, you know, so really trying to pay attention to those.
And I'm trying to back that up so that,
Yeah.
I mean, I've shared with our team, just because of recent things that have happened, is that we need to try to get y'all information, not the Friday before the board meeting, because you're getting the packet and you're getting that. But I'm trying to back that up so that if we can get that to y'all 2 weeks in advance, you've got some background information and you can ask questions. And so we're going to try to get in a better routine so that you're not having to read the 400 pages and the board bulletin, you know, all over one weekend that's giving you context to some of that information. And so we're going to try that for a while and see if that helps you as a board member get information a little earlier. And then I'll get a pulse check from y'all in one-on-ones if that's making an improvement. So, sorry.
No,
Just
I think
curious.
it's very important to have that conversation. Like, again, it's about expectations and it's trust. And you bring up a really good point. We did the team trust inventory with the team of 8. Sometimes when we're doing strategic planning with teams, with districts, we take that team trust and we even bring it down to the senior leader team. What's that team trust between the senior leader team and the board? Like when you're talking about, is there that fear factor, why does that, is it there? Why is it there? And then we start to have team of however many, 15, 18, depending on the size of the district, team of 10, however many, sitting around the table talking to each other. It's really powerful, and I think, you know, that's something that can evolve with you all as you all think about how you're going to consider long-term goals. But I appreciate that.
So did everybody who wants to answer that question, did you get a chance to answer that question or no?
Your question was also about the one-on-ones, like the effectiveness of the one-on-ones. I mean, to Riley's point about just time, like, it's easy to spend like an hour with you, just because
Right.
things that I bring on my list, things that you have on a separate list, and then you want to talk about board. So, I mean, And it's hard to get all those things done in 30 minutes, but 30 minutes is better than nothing, right? So I'm certainly not like asking for more time, because I know you don't have a lot of extra time, because you also have to get all 7 of us in a week. But I like what we're doing in our one-on-ones, whether you're giving us context around board, and so I'm not asking for, again, more time in that. I guess we gotta talk fast. We gotta talk fast. Because I think the face-to-face conversations are helpful for me. Because you can give a little bit more context to something than what's in a little paragraph in a board bulletin. So, no, I value the one-on-ones. I'm not asking for more change. I guess really we'll get what we can get done in that amount of time. So.
And I would just ask, and I'll ask everyone in the next one-on-one, are you getting the right information that you need? Are you getting it in the time in which you need it? Are you getting too much information? Do you need to know every single time an ambulance goes to a campus? Do you want to know that? Do you want to know? I mean, there's a lot of information that I am trying to gauge from you. Is it too much? Is it not enough? I hate it when I miss something, like that other issue that, so I try to be situationally aware as well. So I just would ask in our next couple of one-on-ones, if you'll just reflect for you as an individual, because you are all very different and your needs and your communication needs are very different. Some feel like you don't need as much time, and I'm feeling like I need more time with you. I don't want to spend too much of your time because they did lie to you probably about how much time. This is a time-intensive role that you are in. And so I want to be respectful of you as moms and dads and husbands and wives, and also in your day jobs. So please, when we meet next, if you will give me feedback from your lens, you as an individual. Is it too much? Is it not enough? Do you need it earlier? Do you need your one-on-one moved a week even before the week in which we're doing it? I've even thought about that. Would that be helpful? So we can talk about that individually, but just really want to make sure that I'm in tune to your needs, and am I meeting those needs for you as an individual person in terms of communication. So
The packets are a challenge in reviewing. I mean, I have to confess to all of you, sometimes I'm at the office on Monday morning scrambling like crazy going through it because I didn't do it during the weekend. And that happens to me sometimes because sometimes on Friday I'm just like, just run the week, I'm thinking, man, I don't look at anything else. So it's difficult, it is difficult. So if we're getting an extra day, maybe sometimes I can change my habits, right? And I can review habits. But some of it, when we're going through the agenda review, I'm already thinking, okay, what am I going to focus on there when I go over things? Some of the things we already know, right? We've already been through it, so you don't have to spend as much time the longer you're doing this. But I think you're doing a great job with keeping us informed. Is there too much information once in a while? Well, yeah, but it's just a click telling us what's going on. I'd rather know than not know.
I'll say more of the same. I think backing of the packets are good because some of the one-on-ones, when you haven't seen the agenda yet, we're spending so much time and it is over. So, and everything that you've said, everyone has said already. And two, if you get it on a Friday afternoon, and then there's a piece that I want to get more context from Mike or Gabby, I don't want to call them on Saturday or Sunday, but I do, and I feel bad about that because I know I can't call them on Mondays. So it's very good. I think it'd be good practice to pull it back a little bit further, give us more time to digest it. And on the board bulletins, I read all those, and I think that gives a lot of good context and it helps me out quite a bit.
Okay, so we'll work on backing that up. I would prefer, if at all possible, to not call them on a weekend. I try really hard not to call my team on a weekend unless they know it's an emergency. And so if it helps you have those questions, and then it also helps the team. Mondays of board meetings are stressful, and for everybody. I have a team of people that come to work every day wanting to do a good job. for the children first and foremost, and our staff, and for you. And so, for them to be able to get you a comprehensive answer so that, again, you can do the job that only you can do. If it helps to back that up, then I want to be able to do that. So,
Yeah.
and then you need your own weekends.
Yeah, I mean, so I don't know, I'm talking a lot about how I do this, but like I've tried to adopt if it's not an emergency, I don't call or text, right? Like, so if it's something that, I don't need the answer right away, like I'm gonna send an email, right? And so like, even if I'm processing the packet on the weekend, like I know that I don't need an answer until Monday. Right, and so I'm going to send the email, and I'm not going to call anybody, but if it's maybe more urgent than that, then I will try to text first. I generally try not to call, but just, so that kind of time horizon, right? So if you get an email from me, and I also try to say not an emergency. So I don't know, I would it's like, I never call them on a weekend. What are you doing, Rucker?
Mondays are impossible.
Well, if you've been doing that, I haven't
If you get it on
heard it.
Friday, well, this goes back to if you get on Friday, what you're saying about pulling back the days a little bit. If you get on Friday afternoon, I'm like, I'm going to the football game and everything else.
Yeah.
And
Well, if you are calling them on the weekend, I don't know
I
about
do
it.
ask for permission before.
And y'all also know, and y'all are incredibly respectful of my weekends. And on behalf of my family, I want to say thank you to that. But I also know, and I think y'all know, if you need me, you get me. You can text me, you can call me, so not a problem. I mean, we are here to support you and support our district, and so I'd be shocked that you're calling them very often on a weekend, because I think they would have told me. And I'm not hearing any of it.
Guilty.
That's a guilty.
Okay, Mike, are you
Pacific
hiding it
Sunday
from me?
late.
Okay, Mike looks guilty. I think
I'll always take the calls.
they will as well.
I've
So,
texted Mike on weekends.
we always
brisket.
text Mike and call him anytime.
Are your
About smoking a
meetings,
brisket.
what day of the week is your regular Mondays?
Mondays.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
Wednesday now, you get the packets on Wednesday.
Well, they're getting the
Starting-
packets still on Fridays. We post the agendas now based on
Oh.
new requirements.
Oh, I
We
gotcha.
have to
The
post it
posting.
3 days.
Gotcha.
And so they see topically
Oh,
what is
gotcha.
on the agenda, but it's the meat of the packet.
I
They
see.
haven't been, the practice has been to get it out on
I
Fridays.
see.
So I think we're going to need to work on backing up that practice, and we'll work on that with our team.
Yeah.
What do y'all-
Thank you for letting us go into the weeds here.
I'm sorry.
We've driven off a good.
I caused that. Thank you.
No, it's
No, you did not.
This is where you get to have that conversation. It's part of
Yeah.
trust, team building, not getting caught off guard in a board. Like, how do we make sure that we're conducting a business as we should? It's business as usual. It's good. The 20 signs. This is, to me, this is good to have at the dais, just to have handy. But I also want to challenge you all to challenge each other. Like, are we in the strategic? Are you in the strategic role while you're asking that question, or have you gotten into the tactical? Use those terms with one another. It doesn't have to be disrespectful, but in an effort to really do the right thing. How do we know that we're doing the right thing? It's accountability. You all have to hold each other accountable for the role that you are charged to do as a board member. So I think this is always good to have in front of you at a board meeting. I'm going to jump over to I think we're at the good governance. So the next couple of pages in your packet are the second inventory that you took. You have the 2024, and then you have the 2025. One of you decided to take the good governance inventory twice, and I don't know who, and it doesn't matter. It's fine, because I don't think it skewed the results too terribly.
The answer's the same. That's what
But the answers were the same, which I thought was fascinating, hilarious, actually. But the 2025, if you want to jump over the 2025 results,
Yeah, at the very top.
yeah. So if you look, and again, if we see an I don't know, it's usually a newer board member that maybe just doesn't know yet or hasn't been through a full cycle. That's not always the case, but I say that to say that there weren't a whole lot of no's. It was either yes or I don't know. There were a few no's, but it was either yes or I don't know. And so if you don't know, this is an opportunity to ask questions and to know. And so what's very interesting to me in this is there is no orange in here. The orange is if the majority of responses are no or I don't know, which is very encouraging. Most districts, and I think I shared this with you all last year, even last year's results were very, very good. I don't think you had any oranges last year either. Most districts I go to, and they do the inventory, you'll see at least half of these boxes orange for whatever reason. Sometimes it's just the lingo that we use in the questions that maybe it's not clear. But this is like pretty impressive to look at when we ask questions like, have you adopted a shared vision that incorporates input from the community and reflects local aspirations? All of you said yes. You all, every one of you. So you know that. Do we ensure the vision aligns with the state's mission, objectives, and goals for education established by law or rule? There's an I don't know there, and so I think that's a good opportunity to ask questions about, like, eight of us said yes. Like, what does that mean? How do we do that? How do we ensure that it aligns? What's been our process in the past? So think about this as your scorecard or your evaluation. The superintendent has an evaluation, staff has the evaluation, has an evaluation. This is really, where do we need to work as a board? And honestly, like, it's hard to give you all like where to improve, because there's a majority of this is really positive, really positive. 2.3 is probably the one that I see the most in the no, I don't know. Incorporates equity when making decisions and evaluating systems and processes. And that might be something we talk about right here, right now, is because there were at least 3 people that are not sure about this. How do we incorporate, when we're talking about systems and processes, the board ensures systems and processes are in place to accomplish the vision and goals. How do you all incorporate equity when making decisions and evaluating systems and processes?
I still don't know what that question means.
Yes, can you give like some examples, just some more clarity, because I'm pretty sure I was probably in one of these no.
Yeah.
Because I don't feel like that we specifically talk about when we're making decisions. Like, I don't feel like we're very specific with this language.
Equity could be, it was actually one of the variables. How are you ensuring access to resources? So when we're talking about equity, I mean, that can transcend any one of these, but let's talk about it from the standpoint of financial stewardship. How do you all make decisions about how we distribute resources and staff and budgets to ensure equity with expectations, with needs of the district? If that makes sense. Do you have a system? Like, what is the system for staffing a campus?
Was that for the board?
No, that's for you.
Yeah, and maybe the silence is an indication of communication, so I'm curious about that. But the way we staff, so obviously we have staffing guidelines, and I think those guidelines have been shared with everybody. If you're new to the board, you might not know that our campuses with larger populations of students who are considered economically disadvantaged and/or campuses that struggle academically are staffed different. And so an example of that is Hubbard Branch gets 11 staff members above the allocations that all of the other campuses get. Southwest, about, I think last I looked, it was 9 positions. It's not exactly 11 each time, like South Belton Middle School gets additional staffing. Who am I missing? Chisholm Trail gets additional staffing. It looks a little different based on those campuses, because even within those campuses, while they may have some similar ratings, their needs are different. And so it looks different, and it's a collaborative process. I know many of y'all know this. It's a collaborative process with that campus principal, with their data, with their needs, with teaching and learning, with human resources, with Ben or Denise if it's elementary or secondary, and a decision is made based on what that campus needs. And so when I read the question about equity, that's an example of a staffing approach for those campuses. And that's made prior to going into a school year so that they can hire and have those positions. Also, many of those campuses who have higher percentages of students in poverty also get title funds. And so within their campus improvement plans, they have additional things above and beyond what every campus has in terms of materials or support. And the campus principal sits down, again, with teaching and learning, and Ben or Denise, Gabby, and they talk about what are the needs for this campus that are uniquely their needs, and then title funds are allocated to our title identified campuses. And so when I read that, that's what that meant to me.
So with that example, a board question might be like, what is our process for ensuring, or what is our process for assigning staff? Like, that's the question, not, I think we need more staff at this campus to help support that. Like, that's two different things. One is telling you how many staff members you need on a campus versus what is our process for assigning staff to campuses based on need. Do you see the difference there? There can also, like, I also think of, like, let's put an academic spin on this, incorporating equity. How about access to, how do we give access to, how do all students have access to the programs that we offer, whether it's CTE, whether it's advanced courses, and so are we limiting who can get into those courses, or do we have equitable access for all students to be able to participate? So I might ask, as a board member, I would ask, what is our process for ensuring all students have access to AP classes? What's our process? How do we do that? And so is there a so that's different than saying we need to recruit kids to take dual credit courses. Like, now that's a little bit more that's probably not the best example, but that's probably more in the weeds than how are we doing that? If you all have an expectation you want more students taking advanced courses, then that's a goal you set. And then it's your job to say, okay, well, what's our process to make sure more kids have access, equitable access to opportunities? So equity can mean a lot of things. Those are just a couple of examples.
Yeah, I mean, so from a terminology standpoint, when I read this question, right, what I went back to was our, core belief of each and every, right? Like, so, we care about each and every student and each and every student's individual needs, and how do we get them to the goal, right? And I know equity and equality, right? Like, those are not kosher words at the moment, right? But I think about, there's a graphic, a cartoon, right? It's the three kids looking over the fence at the baseball game. Do you guys remember that? Right? So you got the tall kid, the medium-sized kid, and the short kid, right? Trying to look over the fence, and only the tall kid can look over the fence, right? But you can you can all give them one box to stand on, while the tall kid can still see over. The middle kid maybe still is like pulling a Wilson, and the little kid still can't, get over, right? But it's about how do you give the shorter kid 3 boxes so he can see over? How do you get the kid that's in the middle, the box and a half or 2 boxes so that he can see over? And actually, the tall kid doesn't need the box, right? And so now you've given them the opportunity to the experience, right? And so when I read this question, I tied it back to, okay, we talk about each and every all the time in all of these cases, like that's what it meant for me. So like that's how I answered this question. Yeah.
I think what I saw when I read it, and you're right, that the problem is that term has gotten such a negative connotation in the last few years. But I looked at it as to the way I answered it, which was, are we, as the board, we're setting these goals, and we're setting these standards. Are we doing right? Are we deploying our resources in a way that's going to, let's face it, the resources that need to be applied to a high-income school are vastly different than those that need to be applied. And you talked about it in staffing. I don't think just staffing, but I've heard people say, well, in y'all's campus, the rich schools get all the money, and I'm like, actually, if you want to get down into the weeds, our campuses that have the most poverty get the most money put into them because we have to, because we're trying to get them up to a certain level, and a lot of these kids started behind. When they showed up for kindergarten and first grade, they were already behind the kids that showed up for kindergarten and first grade in the richer school. It's not a quality of parent, it's just a fact across the entire state. I've always said, you show me someone's median income, I can tell you what the score of that campus is probably going to be. It's pretty simple to do. But that's where I read, is that are we deploying the resources, and you spoke to staffing, and it's money and instructional coaches, and yeah, this campus over here might need more than this one over here, because we set a standard, so we want everybody to be here. Well, these 2 campuses are already way up here. We've got to do something to help get these campuses up, which means this campus over here may not need that level of support. They're okay. This campus over here needs more teachers, more aides, more whatever it is. Not our job to decide. That's your job and the admins to say, hey, we need more instructional coaches here. We need this. I don't think boards need to be like, well, I think we need a math coach. That's not my role. I just want the math grades to come up at this campus. How do y'all make that work?
Yeah, and we establish in our budgeting, this is our foundational budget based on number of students, based on programs, those kind of things. And so everybody gets this.
Yeah.
And then again, based on the challenges a school might face, then they might get supplemental funds to support that. Like you said, either in staffing, could be in some materials, could be in differentiated support for principal supervisor time, for example. It's in professional learning, how we support them in staffing, as well as overall funding.
I agree with Brandon. That question was kind of vague. I really didn't understand it, but I thought, well, I'll apply my own interpretation to it, which is kind of in line with what Jeff's saying. And if you look at our district, you look at the southern part of the district, it's like what we did with that last bond with Southwest, all the things that we added over there, closing down Miller Heights. So in my world, when I hear the word equity, to me that means fairness, because that's what I do professionally. Equity always means fairness, right? In the legal profession. When you talk in legal circles, when you hear the word equity, you talk about fairness. So I thought, well, are we being fair to those kids over there? And I think that we are, and I think that in allocating resources and looking at those facilities over there and trying to improve things, we can't make it a Burrell, right? It'll never be a Burrell, but we do the best we can with what we have. It'll never be the same. It'll never be the same facility. You can't compare them. But we make the best effort to do that. So that's why I said yes.
Yeah, that's good. And this is in context with your vision and goals. Your goals are the last page, or on the last page, not the back, but you see Belton ISD district goals 25-26. And so you can see how you can build equity into, and we're talking about equity, ensure exceptional learning experiences for each and every student. How do we do that? How are we doing that? And we've had that discussion just now. In goal 5, maximize our resources. Like you're talking equity, you are talking about doing those things. Yeah, and equity is not a bad, it's not a bad word. I know the context that it's been in, but we do have a responsibility. I mean, this is, most of these, if not all of them, are in some way defined in board policy as your responsibility. And so I think that's the way to look at this, but good conversation. Any other observations or questions about the good governance inventory?
I will say we did one of these years ago. I don't know, nobody in here was here at that time, but there was orange all the way down.
It was bleeding.
Do you remember that?
Yeah.
And it was because he didn't realize that there was an I don't know answer. It was
Yeah.
either yes or
No.
no. And he didn't know the answer. He was like, no.
No.
And halfway through, he's like, I didn't know we could do that. And it was just orange. And even the person doing it was like, something's wrong with this board because they got somebody who doesn't think they're doing anything.
So you say that a lot of boards that you work with, a lot of them are orange?
It's very interesting, yes. And a lot of times, some of the language, it could just be the way the question is asked. So
Yeah.
it's also developing a language around, when we talk about strategic, tactical, operational, like, do we understand what those terms mean? Well, you all do, because you've been hearing it. Equity, we just had this big conversation around equity. I bet if we were to ask this question next year, you might answer it differently. You might see more leaning towards the green, unless you have a complete turnover on the board, and then
Yeah.
you might see some different results there. Yeah, I think it is very interesting to see the differences in how boards respond, but it's very encouraging because this is, and we say use this as an onboarding tool when you do have new board members. Because it's an opportunity to talk about, you know, like number 5, the board's duties are distinct, and the board works effectively as a collaborative unit, as a team, with the superintendent to lead the district in fulfilling the vision and goals. What does that mean? And so you can have a conversation with new board members about what this means based on these questions that are asked. Yeah, so it's very interesting to see how different boards respond and function. Usually the advocacy ones are the ones that almost consistently we see orange in the advocacy area. And because they don't always understand, boards don't always understand, like when you say advocacy, is it like federal level, the state level, the local level? I mean, do you all have a process for how you advocate for your district? Doesn't even have to be federal, state. It could be just advocating with, like, telling your story. What are the great things that are happening in Belton ISD that the public needs to know? And how are you communicating that? So advocacy can mean a lot of things, not just, are you at the Capitol talking about what your needs are? That could be advocacy for a district, but is that what's important for this district? That's where that conversation can take you. All right, let me see what we have here. I'm going to skip this. This is still the inventory. And it's your scorecard. I think we said that. And I talked about unified versus uniform. Strength of the team is each individual member. The strength of each member is the team. Throw in a little Phil Jackson there. I don't want to get you, I don't want to stress you out, but we have one more piece. This is not really the end. This is the end of this piece, but we want to cover the ISO, evaluating and improving student outcomes, piece of the required training. And so I think we're ready for the next. Any questions about anything we've talked about up to this point? Well, while we're switching that out, one more page I want you to go to. It looks like this chart here.
Okay.
So Erin, you mentioned you all went on some learning walks or campus walks. And we were working with another district, Hutto actually, and they asked for, like, what are questions, like we want to make sure, like we want to be in the strategic zone. What are process questions that we can ask around these areas. And particularly if I'm doing a learning walk or if I'm doing a campus walk and I'm in a classroom, what's appropriate for me to ask as a board member without getting into the tactical questions?
Hey, Jody, can we take about 5 before we?
Oh,
jump
you
into
bet. That's good. You need a brownie. It's a brownie break.
Yeah. Brandon needs a brownie.
Let's take
There you
5.
go.
Oh, there you go.
This sort of giving it.
If you want, you can take
Yeah,
10.
let me recess real quick, okay?
Yes. Oh, yes.
So it is 7:08 PM and the board will now go in recess. Kate, it is now 7:16 PM and we are now back on the record.
All right, let's keep moving. Right before we took a break, I wanted you all to take a look at this chart. But these are questions that you can ask. Well, you can ask any. By the way, let me clarify this. You all can ask any question that you need answers to. We're really trying to make sure you are thinking about the role of the board at a 50,000-foot view. Like what are process questions? And Chris, you said it, like the longer you've been on the board, the more you become acclimated to sort of the work and the lingo and all of the things. Newer board members may have more questions on the front end and grow into the role as a board member. So I don't want to give the impression that it's not okay to ask questions. I hope that did not come across that way. But I also want to encourage you all to think about how you're asking questions in a way that it's more of a process question and not am I in the weeds kind of like am I steering or am I rowing kind of questions. But this helps frame out if I'm asking about staffing questions, talent management, we give you some examples of, if we're talking about school culture and morale around staff, you might ask a question, how do we implement strategies to foster a positive, inclusive, and supportive culture for both staff and students? Like, there are ways to ask questions. It's usually what and how questions. It's not can I or shall we or we should, that kind of thing. So I share this with you just to give you examples of what process questions look like. Be thinking about how you ask questions to make sure you are staying in your strategic role. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. So part of this evening, we are also covering the ISO training, Evaluating and Improving Student Outcomes. A piece of legislation several years ago, if all 8 members are attending the Team of 8 training, our ISO can be incorporated into that. You can get 6 hours for the low price of 3, 6 training hours for 3. So you'll actually come out of here with 6 hours. The ISO really is every other year. So some of you got credit for this last year. You'll get credit again this year. Just keep you up to date. And this, I promise, won't take too long. But I think this is important for all of us to remember. Student outcomes don't change until adult behaviors change. Again, that starts with us. It starts with right here at this table, the folks that are sitting around this table. Disregard the third bullet because we incorporated that at the beginning, but school boards matter. And they matter because you were elected. You represent the vision and values of the community. And so you have to think about your responsibility from that mindset that you're representing what your community is looking for from you. School board behaviors impact student outcomes. Let's talk about that. How do school board behaviors impact student outcomes?
I think an example was given tonight of a school board member who had goals about career, technology, military, and saw there was a shortage and brought in some of that desire to increase, that education, and I think we've definitely seen that in our high schools. So that's one way.
Yeah.
I think one way is by being consistent. We have our goals and our visions, but by working with the administration, school boards being consistent You know, it's one thing for the board to say, boards are constantly changing the goal and the vision, and it's always something different. One, you're gonna burn through superintendents, you're gonna burn through administrators, but that trickles down. And what happens in that is our people with their feet on the ground get to the point that they're no longer gonna pay attention because, and I've heard it said, never in this district, but I've heard it said is, don't worry, this is gonna change in 2 years, don't worry about changing it now. But if you're on the right path, now you always have to veer and you have to make changes, but if a board is consistent, even through elections, when board members change, they understand, hey, this is our vision, this is our goal, you get buy-in from the community, you get buy-in from all the employees. When boards are constantly changing, you know, every time there's an election, well, you know, let's throw out this and let's just start all over. Nobody can work in that environment, and that will trickle down. It'll get on the campus level. The principals will become, you know, their own administrators on their campuses, and you're gonna, they feel it. Everybody feels it because there's not a common vision anymore. You can't have a board that decides it wants to change every year. Change is gonna happen, but it's gotta happen through a process and be gradual, not just, we're gonna shift 180 degrees because we're gonna go right back where we were beforehand.
That's good.
I mean, you know, how we conduct ourselves in the boardroom matters, right? I mean, we know that through our superintendent search process, right, that superintendent candidates watch board meetings, right? They want to know.
That's right.
They want to know what they're getting into, right?
Yeah,
we know that teachers actually, in some cases, actually watch those meetings too, and so you know they want to know what they're getting into, and so you know, how are we? I think I'm answering the question: how do you, as board members, you know, make an impact, right? So. You know, and so are we doing things that, I don't know, improve the morale, keep the morale up, don't destroy the morale while we are still trying to make improvements, right? It's a very delicate balance, right? Because continuous improvement, you gotta make changes, right? But how do you do that while still keeping everybody sort of focused and energized about that vision, right? Not kicking the chair out from under them. And so like how we do that, I think makes a difference in, you know, down to the classroom, down to the student.
Can you elaborate on that some more?
Sure. There's been a lot of change that's happened in the last 8 years.
Right.
And some of it pretty drastic.
Yes.
Right? But, and, you know, I'll talk for my own behalf, I guess, right? Like, I feel like I've had my hand in a lot of that. But not once, like, have I said in a board meeting, I don't think I've said anything other than the one example I gave earlier. Okay, so maybe once I did it. Maybe once I did it.
And I don't think it was that bad.
Yeah, you know, like, I think it's always, like, when we're getting the academic data, right? We know that the academic data needs improvement in certain areas, right?
Right.
We know that, right? But if you notice, like, what I try to say during those conversations is, like, celebrating the things that we've done, but then echoing sort of what Gabby said, like, and we still have work to do, right? Like, like it's continuous work to do, you know, and I try to be really intentional about not just like destroying those things that aren't where they need to be yet, right? Because, you know, I don't know who's watching, I don't know who's been involved. Like, I don't want to get Gabby down, I don't want to get the instructional coaches down, I don't want to get the classroom teachers down. Like, I want them to hear support. And then if there's something about that I've got another question about, like, I'm going to talk in our one-on-one about it, or I'm going to talk to Gabby about it, right? Like, to kind of dig into that a little bit further. Like, I try to be really intentional about, like, trying to keep that as positive for the team as possible. But man, like, there's been a lot of change in the last 8 years, or your last 10 years, or, you know, whatever the case may be. Did I answer? Is that what you're looking for?
Yeah.
Okay.
Words matter.
Yeah.
Yeah, what we say matters.
And that's been, and like I said, early on for me, that was a really tough. Like, I needed to get there fast. So, and I think that, you know, in Ty's story that you gave, like, that was Ty's story too, right?
Yeah.
Yes, very much.
I'm gonna have to text him on the way home.
One of the things this board has done, and it has helped tremendously, and I've never been in a school district where this happened. And not saying it didn't somewhere, but it certainly has not been in my 36 years, is that y'all's willingness to adopt goals early on. I mean, one, our 5 focus areas came from community input.
That's great.
And so that wasn't this board sitting in a boardroom with the door shut. It came out of our asking hopes and dreams for our community, and it came out of that. But by y'all reaffirming and or adopting those goals and adopting key progress measures early has an impact down to the classroom level. Because what was happening, and happens in a lot of districts, there are districts that have yet to present their district and campus improvement plans.
Mhm.
They don't do it until October, November.
Mm.
Well, almost half your year's gone by.
That's
So
right.
How do you expect positive change at that point?
And I've done that. I'm not being critical of them. I've been in,
Yeah.
most districts I've been in do that. That's the
Yeah.
cycle. And by y'all backing that up, it allows us to start developing. We already know and have a sense of what that next layer of work needs to be, but it doesn't create surprises, because what we were doing, and it still sometimes happens, is a principal has developed a plan. It's August, they get surprised by a key progress measure, and now all of a sudden they're having to go back to their plan. We've done that to them before. And so by backing it up, that really has helped our principals. And again, sometimes there's still a surprise, but for the most part, that has helped them get ahead of improvement planning processes. And so I just commend this board for letting us shift that timeline. That's been incredibly impactful. It impacted better professional learning in the summer, because you were aligning your professional learning plan to that campus and district improvement plan. So that's been incredibly helpful to shift that cycle.
I mean, that goes to what Jeff was saying, right? Like, to some extent, our job is stability, right? Like, by providing that stability, and like, you know what's coming, you know what the goals are, right? Like, you're able to shine even brighter, right, when it comes to, you know, executing those things, because we're able to keep that stable. So hopefully, I mean, it sounds like it's working, so let's keep doing that, guys.
So you'll set the goals, you provide clarity about direction, but then there's also progress monitoring.
Yeah.
And that's part of the behavior that school boards should exhibit is, and I think you do. I believe you all have a system or a process for reporting to the board back on the goals that you have. How are we making progress? You all are monitoring that progress towards the goals that you have. By the way, it might be a good idea to be on that page where the goals are, because this is where we're talking. You also have a loose sheet of paper that's your House Bill 3 goals. Those are student outcome goals as well. We'll talk about. So when we're talking about improving student outcomes, these are terms to know and understand: inputs, outputs, outcomes. Your inputs are, it's really the resources, the activities, it's the action strategies behind the work. You all set the goals, but then your leadership team is saying, okay, here's how we're going, this is what we're going to do to work on this goal. The outputs are how we measure along the way. So it might be middle of the year, like that could be a benchmark in the middle of the year to do a check on measuring our progress. And maybe that's something that's reported back to the board. These are just examples. Your outcome, it's kind of the end of the cycle. Like, so at the end of the year, that might be your star results. That's your star. So your inputs are, this is how we're doing the work. This is what we're doing to try to move the needle. The output is how we're measuring it along the way. The outcome is the end result. Like did we make progress on that goal at the end of the year? So those are terms to know and understand. I don't think we need to do this, but this would be an activity that we talked about, like give an example of an input, an output, an outcome. Why don't we just do one? An input. Melinda, I'll pass it to you. Think about it, if it's well, let's pull this out. Let's look at one of the goals.
Like goal 2.
Goal 2, ensure exceptional learning experiences for each and every student.
Right, and so strategies within goal 2, 1, and there's a key progress measure associated with it, is in our data, looking at needing to shift data from meets to masters and really pushing that data up. So critical thinking was a focus and very aligned to our journey of a graduate. And so we've got strategies we've developed rubrics, we have calibration walks, those kind of things.
So those are your inputs.
Those are inputs. And then for every goal, it either through a board workshop or a report in a board meeting. Every goal throughout the year
Yep.
will have time to give those kind of updates, as well as we always do a mid-year on all of the goals. So in January, we do that, and then in June,
And what data are you using to report on maybe a goal like?
the
goal
data
2,
associated with the key progress measure.
Okay.
KPMs.
right? And then your outcome would be what in that scenario?
It's totally aligned to the KPMs, and
Mhm.
so it's did we meet it? Were we still in progress? Did we not meet it? Tied to each of those KPMs, and then the associated data with it. And
Yep.
so like House Bill 3 goals.
Yes.
Now that comes a little bit later because there's a lag in when we get that data.
Yes, for sure.
But it comes after we get that data.
Yeah. So this is just a cycle, like what's the input with, and specifically around the goals that you set. Other outcome measures. So you do have, we're in the business of improving student achievement, right? So student outcomes, that's our #1 priority. But there are other outcomes too. So when you're talking about maybe staff goals, you've got 4 other goals
Yep.
here. One is around engagement. One is around attracting, retaining, and supporting your employees. You've got developing a district-wide culture of value, support, growth. Then the question is, how do you measure those? So with student outcomes, it's generally going to be quantitative data that you're using. A lot of times those others are going to be qualitative. You're looking at other, it could be, when you're talking about engagement, it might be a survey that's sent out to your community or to your parents, do we have opportunities for parents to engage? I'm making things up.
Yeah.
What are questions that you might ask on a survey that are important to you to get to the question of have we strengthened and supported engagement of our stakeholders? So that's just to make you might have qualitative outcomes, you might have quantitative. Staff retention, that could be quantitative. That's an easy measure. Are we able to retain staff? But you also might want to look at, why are people leaving? Are they unhappy? Or are they why are people leaving? So that you might have a qualitative measure to look at that. And I really loved hearing that your 5 priorities were collaboratively set, not just with the leadership team and the board, but even with your community. And that should happen, especially if you're doing when you all think about a strategic plan, that's really important to keep your community involved in that conversation, whether these 5 overarching change or not, but keeping your community involved. And then you all identifying what are some non-negotiables. I'm going to guess that student achievement is going to be at the top of your list, and making sure that there are some non-negotiables in there.
Yeah, and actually goal 2 is in every board meeting.
Okay,
So it's
that's
either
great.
something in a workshop or there's a report.
That's great.
Because that our board in the past felt like that was important.
Yeah.
So they hear from our assistant soup for teaching and learning.
Yeah.
at
And that's
almost every board
I see,
meeting.
111.
Yeah.
Because they're all important. They're all, the top 3 behaviors, they all rank as #1. Monitoring, that is what you just described, Melinda. So I have to do this because it's part of the ISO training. I don't mean to insult anybody. So goals should be SMART. SMART goals: specific, measurable, attainable, results focused, time bound. And there's a way to, specifically when we're talking about student outcome goals, making sure you as board members, you want to know, are they measurable? Can we measure progress? And so to do that, do we have a baseline where our kids are today? Well, of course, we know where kids are because we've got all kinds of data to tell us that. And by the way, the STAR test is not the end-all be-all. There are other data, and it's going to be interesting to see what the state does with House Bill 8 passing, the new accountability bill, and how they're going to incorporate shorter tests along the way. So I think it's going to be interesting how that evolves. But a lot of districts will use MAPS data. Do you all use NWA MAPS?
We use StarRen.
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 So there's different data sets that you can use You just have to decide, and maybe it's more than one that you use. Whatever you use, what's the baseline where your kids are today, and where do you want them to be? And then by what deadline? And who are we talking about? What students are impacted by this? So we might be, if it's a CCMR goal, we might very specifically be talking about high school students or middle school students, who knows? But you can look at goal 2, and you can look at your House bill goals, and you can identify, do we have a baseline? Do we have a target? Do we have a deadline? Do we have a population? Here's what these are good examples of well-written outcome goals. Percentage of, these are not Belton's, these are just examples. Percentage of students from our pre-K program who enter kindergarten ready will increase from 20% to 80% by 2021, that's old. But the baseline is 20%, we know, and the population, we're talking about kindergarten students, pre-K program, pre-K students who are entering kindergarten is the population. We have a baseline, we have a target, and we have when it's going to be accomplished. So you see each one of those examples contain the information needed. And so then how are you all measuring? If it's by 2028, how are you measuring from year over year? So Rome wasn't built in a day. You're not going to go from 25 to 50% by the end of 2026. So you might be thinking about, how do we chunk this incrementally? How are we showing progress towards these goals over time until we get to that 50% by 2028? These are just examples. These are not good examples. Students will improve academically. What's missing there?
No, nothing quantitative.
Target,
Yeah.
timeline.
Yeah, most
All
of
of the
it's
smart
missing.
stuff.
All the smart
Yeah.
stuff.
All
All
the
the smart
stuff
stuff's missing. Yeah, the second bullet, what's missing? You've got your population.
No baseline.
Yeah, there's no
There's
baseline.
no baseline, yeah, where you started.
And it says we'll grow each year. It
So
doesn't,
it doesn't
like,
end.
doesn't really end ever. So like what's,
Mathematically, that becomes impossible.
and then that last bullet, percentage of graduates having completed an associate's degree and or been awarded an industry certification will grow from 10 to 30%. What's missing? When? When are, like, what's the date? Is this going to happen tomorrow? Is this going to happen 5 years from now? What's the target? It's about, again, it's about clarity. It's about making sure that goals are appropriate. And again, when you're looking at, I know we want to say we're going to get from 50% to 100% as soon as we can. Be reasonable in how you're setting those targets. And I know this is going to sound terrible. 100% is super lofty. And is it really realistic? I mean, you might be thinking about meet standards versus approaches. Like, how do we get more students hitting that meet standards? Because it carries more weight. But if we're at 20% today, by 2028, maybe thinking about going from 20 to 40%, that might be reasonable in that period of time. But if you're reaching really too high, you're going to have a hard time achieving any of your goals. So like, think about, as part of that SMART, is it reasonable? Is it attainable? When we're talking about goal progress measures, these are the kinds of assessments. Formative, these are, we use these terms, formative, interim, summative. We can give you examples. Formative is anytime, like it could be a quiz. Like, how are we just did this in the middle of an instructional cycle. How are we measuring how well a student learned that information? A quiz or a 6 weeks test might help us understand that. Interim is, again, it's that middle of year benchmark test to give us more comprehensive data. As we're getting closer to the STAR test, are we trending towards making that that leap that we're working towards? And then, of course, summative is you're looking at the year end. These are the kinds of assessments or measures, goal progress measures. Why is it important? Why does it matter? Let's see, it is reasonable to expect what happens in the boardroom will be echoed in the classroom. Do you believe that?
Yes.
What gets measured gets done. You believe that? Yeah. And then you have to monitor it. Progress monitoring helps us know which adult behaviors are improving and which are improving student outcomes and which are not. And if you do have a deficiency there, how do you address adult behaviors? Whose job is it to address adult behaviors?
Their job.
Depends on which adult's behaviors.
Yeah.
That's right.
Where is it happening?
Yeah. That's right.
But for most of them, it's not ours.
That's right.
Yes, for the most part, not us.
All systems need feedback loops to inform progress. On the very back of your packet, you all already do this, so I'm preaching to the choir here. But this is, again, it's Deming, plan, do, check, act. You know, it's that cycle of where you all live in this process. You're in the planning and you're in the checking. Planning and checking. So when we're talking about setting goals, your leadership team should be part of that with you. It's a collaborative setting of goals. Then they put action towards those goals. They're doing the do, right? They're executing the key strategic processes. But then along the way, there's got to be some checks. Are we making progress? That's what Melinda was just saying. Every month we come back and we share with you how we're making progress on our student goals. But with that feedback that you all, it shouldn't just be a sit and get. There should be an opportunity for you all to ask questions, give some feedback. Are we on track? And if so, the administration is ready to go back and act again. It's just this ongoing cycle of continuous improvement. And I think having those conversations publicly, like we're having this conversation, it helps parents and taxpayers know where you all are keeping your eye and what's important, making sure that the kids are achieving. I think the others speak for themselves. Ample evidence that assessing student performance is beneficial, and then with accountability, leaders set goals and make specific decisions. That's why we do this. A monitoring calendar, Melinda, you just talked about it. Like I feel like I don't have to talk about this because you already do this. I will ask, how is this working for you all as a board? The kind of information that you're getting. The monitoring calendar is really just the schedule of when we bring information to you, but it sounds like every board meeting you all are talking about progress measures related to student outcomes. But how do I want to just kind of open it up to you guys. How's that working for you?
I've been in both systems, so I like it. We used to only get data at the end of the year or end of a cycle. Back to Rosie was one of the first ones that ever said, well, by the time we get the data, we're too late in the system. And then Chris has always harped on more data, and so now, I mean, we're to the point that we know, or we should, I mean, if you're paying attention, every month we're given certain KPMs, and so we know, just a couple of years ago, in fact, I think the board was shocked because we did follow, and we saw the great progress we were making on our star RIN data. We were following it all year, and then we get our results and they completely did not match up. And then we find out, well, this happened across the entire state. But I mean, and so that was a shock to the board. But prior to that, it was maybe every 6 months or every 4 months, I don't remember, but it was more of end of cycle. Okay, here we are now, and then you get to the end of the year, but like, here's our star exams. Okay, we've lost an entire year now. What do we do?
Right.
And now, with the information we get, they get to monitor and say, hey, we know we're having trouble at this campus on this. This is what we're going to do to improve it. There should be no surprises on the board about data right now.
That's great.
Yeah. I mean, just over the last couple of years, the maturity around how we use data has like gone through the roof.
Yeah.
That's great.
You know, it's not just here's the data, have fun with it, right? It's here's the data, here's what we see in the data, right? And from what those things are that we see in the data, here's what we're doing about it. Okay, board, what do you all see in the data, right? And like, let's have a conversation about it. Like that's like where we are right now, which is light years ahead of where it was initially.
New board members, how are you all feeling about, because you're seeing this for the process, you're kind of living through this process for a first time, although it's been several months that you've been doing this now, so.
Yeah, I mean, it all makes sense. I think they do Gabby and her team do a really good job of framing it and kind of helping us understand, especially if we weren't early on, understanding what the goal was. You know, that might be the first time we're hearing it, being new on the board. So it's been, I think, really well delivered, and we understand what the goal was and what we're tracking and how we're progressing. So it's done.
It's comforting to know that our district leadership is even looking into, even down to the very classrooms with the data, like they're really breaking it down and figuring out how we can do it better. So it's tracked very well.
Yeah, it's great. So, aren't you happy? This is the last slide of the night. Just as a final reminder, student outcomes don't change until adult behaviors change.
Oh, sorry. All right, give us that number.
You don't have a code. I'm going to send you a certificate with my training service provider number. You're covered. I promise you're covered. Just to wrap up, you didn't have any burning questions, but let's just, as an exit ticket out of here, is there one thing that you learned today that you didn't know or that is validated, something that you were reminded of or you feel validated about?
I'm reminded that I work with a pretty good group. Yeah, and when we went to we go to these conventions and things, and whatever you want to call them. I see boards that are honored and that kind of thing, and I think we do a pretty good job, actually. And then just hearing everyone talking, it reassures that for me.
That's good.
Certainly second that. I mean, it's always good to be reminded on the role, right, and where it is. I mean, even 8 years in, right, it's still, because it's tough, right? Like if you're not on a board, it's your day job, right? I mean, that reminder is always helpful.
Yeah.
I was thinking along the same lines, just a good reminder of just the different technical roles. I think it would be great for us to have the different, I think that this is a good reminder throughout the year, how it lays out and just kind of keeps us in check of what we're doing, which I think we are.
Yeah.
I think we are. But also, it's also a good reminder of just all this that we've talked about tonight. What a great leader we have, who's steering the ship, and then her cabinet. I mean, our district leadership is just top notch. So, and getting to be on campuses like yesterday, the alignment, you can see what we're hearing in the boardroom, what we're hearing from our district leaders, we're hearing it from our campus principals, we're seeing it in the classrooms. And so
just that alignment. You all have systems and processes that speak to alignment, which is amazing. Yeah, that's great. We do have a lot of boards that will add that one pager, the roles page, to their operating procedures as an addendum. Because they value it, they feel like it's a good reminder. It maybe belongs, it's just a suggestion.
I appreciate everybody's engagement. One of the values in our district is around valuing continuous improvement, because we believe that the adults have to model it and cultivate that mindset for children. And that came from our work with our community, and I feel like this board embodies that. And so even being in a conversation like this, I think models for our community that we take all of our roles seriously, and we want to get better and better. We know we're not a perfect system, but we sure come to work every day trying to do and putting the right systems in place for our students. And so I just want to thank the board for a very late evening and a focus on continuous improvement. So.
I'm just going to echo what you two both said, the same thing about just us staying in our lane and the importance. And the one pager, I was thinking the exact same thing here. And I think it's important that if I or any of us are ever out of our lane, that we're checked in that regard. Make sure that none of us get out of our lane and make sure we're doing the job that we're tasked to do it, and let Dr. Golden do her job because she does it well.
I'm just reminded that, you know, if you listen to this board talk and you look at what we do, we are a well-informed board. We're well-intentioned. We have clear-cut goals. And that doesn't mean that we are a rubber stamp. That's never been our role. But we are so well-informed that there's very little reason for a board member in our situation to not understand what's going on. We are given so much information. And not complaining, but we are that well informed.
Yeah.
And to the new board members, I will tell you, after a certain number of years, you get to where you can go through packets extremely quickly. But we are well informed. That's one thing you heard everybody talk about is when we come in there, we've been given so much information to look at that I could never leave a board meeting and tell somebody, well, you know, I voted that way just because everybody else did and I didn't know what. No, I know what I'm doing. I mean, you know, we've got the information in front of us. Nothing gets hidden from us. And the fact that we have the same goals, again, we're not a rubber stamp, but we're well informed and we're well intentioned when we go into a meeting that we're going to do what's best for Belton ISD.
Well, and I think the team, and I know I am, there are mistakes made along the way. I mean, there has been already this year, but a commitment to making sure that we get you the information, because when you've been surprised, that's not okay. And so we acknowledge that when we have done that to you, I am learning and making sure that doesn't happen again. So that's just our commitment to try not to surprise you. So.
Okay, a couple more.
I'd say I'm encouraged by the alignment. On the same thing when we went on those campus visits. You could see the goals that the board, with help from the superintendent and the community, have set, going all the way down into the classrooms. So it's encouraging.
That's good.
I liked seeing the trust inventory and alignment here. Just I felt it. Like it seems like our board all is on the same page or has the same goals, but it was nice to see it quantified. So that was cool.
Yeah.
Make it proof.
Yeah. Proof. Well, it's a pleasure to work with you all, and it's fun to come here and give, good news and reports. We're not having deep conversations about deficiencies in any of these areas. I think there's a lot to be proud of, and you all are well thought of around the state, so keep doing what you're doing, and thank you for the opportunity.
That's good to hear.
No, absolutely.
Yeah, but look at this facility.
Yeah.
This is unique.
This is an
single
amazing
sector. Yeah.
facility, by the
Oh, yeah.
way.
Beautiful example of each and every.
Oh, man.
100%. All right.
Thanks.
Okay. Well, that concludes our special board meeting this evening. There being no further business, we are adjourned at 7:54 p.m.